Welcome ladies and gents, Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter. Of course you can subscribe to the channel. Let's talk boxing. By now you guys are used to me being positive and happy-go-lucky and always trying to not moan about certain things and try to look at the positives of each side of an argument and stuff like that. Well, I'm moody today, so today's going to be a ranting video. We're going to talk about JANIBEK ALIMKHANULY and the state of the middleweight division in a moment, but first I want to talk about Rolando Romero against Ismael Barosso, because this has really wound me up, man. I mean, you've got Rolando Romero, who's a fun fighter to watch, whose claim to fame is getting separated from his consciousness against Tank Davis. Prior to that, he was undefeated, but who had he beaten of note? Nobody really. Anthony Yiggit, okay, recognizable name, decent win, nothing special. But he'd also been gifted a decision, many felt, against Jackson Martinez. This is not a guy who'd been up there and proven himself and really established himself as a legitimate fighter to face Tank Davis. Most people felt that was a cherry pick. He was not considered, and is not considered by the vast majority of people that really know boxing, to be in the top 10 or possibly top 15 of the lightweight division. And he gets knocked out by Tank, moves up a weight category, and gets an automatic shot at the WBA light welterweight title, vacant title, against Ismael Barosso, 40 years old. My man is in the same generation of fighters as Luis Ortiz. This dude is so old, I've heard rumors he used to spar with Joe Frazier, that he once fought Hector of Troy. And this is the dude who in 2016 got knocked out by $1 Million Crawler, who 6 years later is fighting for a world title, and he's had a couple of losses since then, right? This is not a guy that's rebuilt and established himself as some star of the sport after a dodgy period in his career. He's 40 years old, and 40 years old at lightweight. Yeah, he might be a bit younger than Luis Ortiz, but heavyweights age slower, because at lightweight you're more reliant on speed, stamina, reflexes. What a joke of a fight. And then the fight goes ahead, and what do you see? What you see is Rolando Romero get Ismael Barosso in the corner and starts letting go of his hands, and Barosso throws a big clubbing right hook which lands right up the side of the head of Rolando Romero. Rolly goes at him again, and what happens? Barosso throws back again. They come together and Tony Weeks steps in to stop the fight. What on earth was Tony Weeks watching? Don't tell me that was a human error. What were you watching? Because as old as Barosso is, forget the fact that he needed a Zimmer frame to do his ring walk, the one thing he does have is a bit of pop. 22 knockout wins from his 24 victories. So when he's landing flush on the opponent and you're in the middle of an exchange, there's a real possibility there that as they're fighting, you're just suddenly going to see Rolly Romero drop as like a sack of potatoes. He's not going to lose that punching power. So why are you jumping in? What did you see in that moment to warrant stopping the fight? And then people all over Twitter are getting suspicious. He was trying to protect Rolly Romero, people are saying, and then you've got other people getting upset about it and being critical, and you know how it works with these network fanboys. And I'm talking about everybody that's attached to any network. I don't care whether it's the PBC and Showtime, whether it's DAZN, whether it's BT, whoever it might be. If you are affiliated to a network like that as a fan, instead of wanting to see what is just and what the best fights, you're a joke, to be honest with you. And this is what we're seeing now, people jumping up and down and trying to defend this. And just when you think it can't possibly get any worse, what do you then hear? Rumors that Rolando Romero is going to defend his light welterweight title, right? Even though he shouldn't be in the top 20 in the division. BoxRec have Ismael Barosso at 63 ranked, right? What do you hear? Who's he going to defend against? Ryan Garcia, who in the weight category below had not fought anybody of note until again he fought Tank Davis, then decided to quit after getting jabbed in the ribs. What kind of a joke is boxing becoming, man? And then on the other hand, in the light heavyweight division, you've got one of the great fights, a fight that could be a historic fight, one for the ages. Artur Beterbiev against Dimitri Bivol, and the WBC will not sanction it as an undisputed title fight because of Dimitri Bivol's nationality. This is the state of boxing. And then when I'm critical, because this stuff happens a lot more in the US than anywhere else, I'm sorry, but it does. When I'm critical of these sorts of things, when it comes to American boxers, some people don't like it. What is it you want me to say right now? How do you analyze this? You've got some of the top fighters in the United States who are not fighting anyone. Take Jaron Boots Ennis. How praising have I been of Boots Ennis over however long now it's been? A long time that I've been talking about Boots Ennis, not just as a fighter, but as a man. when he was trying to raise money for that, or awareness to raise money for that kid who had cancer and stuff like that. So he's a good guy. I've got nothing against Boots. Good guy, looks like a brilliant fighter. How inactive is he? Who's he fighting? He's not fighting anybody. But people want to put him on a pedestal, right? People are accusing Bud Crawford of not wanting to fight him and stuff like that. These guys who are not taking risks are being put on pedestals out there. They're getting title shots at vacant titles and stuff like that, and then people put them on pedestals. And then when you see, this is what's the funniest thing to me, when you then start to see the ranking systems of all these different organizations and governing bodies, you have fans that cuss the people that create them when they've got certain fighters in there that don't have that same sort of gravitas to their name. I remember Michael Benson was putting up an 8-man lightweight tournament or something, and he had Kambosos in there. And somebody said, why would you have Kambosos in there? He's not at their level. Put in Isaac Cruz. Based on what? Isaac Cruz is the same sort of thing as Rolly Romero. What? Because he fought Tank. Is that the litmus test now? If you fight Tank and lose, you're one of the best lightweights in the world. Is this what we're doing now? It's madness. It is absolute madness. Tony Weeks needs to be investigated. Listen, maybe it was a shocking error. Maybe he panicked for whatever reason. Maybe he saw something in the eyes of Barosso. Let him make his case. I don't know what he could have possibly have seen, but let him make his case. But there has to be some sort of investigation. But as for Orlando Romero now about to fight Ryan Garcia for a light welterweight title, my goodness me, man. Where does boxing go from here? Let's move on from that though, and let's talk about JANIBEK ALIMKHANULY. We'll talk about his display. We'll get a little bit technical, and then we'll talk about the wider middleweight division. When it came to the fight last night, we all knew that Stephen Butler was no great shakes, and that there was only one way this fight was really going to go. ALIMKHANULY was always going to stop him. Now, Butler came out and he started to move a little bit, and he was trying to get ALIMKHANULY to chase after him. And I understood that. Perhaps he was trying to line him up with something. And in the first round, JANIBEK was overreaching a little bit. And then in the second round, when he started to get his feet closer, what you saw is Stephen Butler make a really key error. He basically stepped inside the foot of JANIBEK. And we've spoken about this on the past in this channel. A lot of people are very basic when they talk about an orthodox fighter versus a southpaw. You must always get your lead foot on the outside of the lead foot of the opponent. That's not always the case. It's a higher risk strategy to step inside. But there is a time and a place for it when you're going to line them up with your backhand, when you're going to get your head in a safe position. But this was not a case of the two guys being sort of like almost square, face to face, right? And facing each other almost square on position. And then he steps sort of to the outside and lines them up with the backhand. This was a case of him being almost at an angle, facing on to JANIBEK. And he stepped in a diagonal way on the inside and he threw a jab. And he overcommitted with the jab. And then JANIBEK was able to just roll with it and then shoot an uppercut and catch him with the uppercut. And from that point forth, it was all she wrote because Stephen Butler never recovered from that. What I will say is that he's very, very good with that backhand. He's very good with it, and his accuracy is absolutely incredible. You have to give him a lot of credit for the fact that he doesn't seem to miss with it when it comes to big shots. According to CompuBox, prior to last night's fight, he was landing 50% of his power shots, which is massive because 36% is the average for a middleweight. But it would have gone up even further because last night it looked like he couldn't miss. Even the final blow, the final knockout, you saw that when he threw the shot from the side on angle, Butler actually threw his hand up to cover up the side of his face, and there was very little gap to find through, and he was able to find it directly on the button, right on the chin. He's a very, very accurate guy, ALIMKHANULY, and he's struggling to find opponents at the moment. He has fought former world title contenders like Hassan and Dam and Jikab. He's fought Rob Brandt. These are good names, you know. And then more recently, Denzel Bentley, who gave a very good account of himself. But although we speak about it being a good account of himself, and it really was for Bentley because he stepped up, it was a pretty comfortable win for JANIBEK. So he's always looked head and shoulders above anybody he's fought. And I wouldn't actually be against him fighting Denzel Bentley again. It would be an interesting fight because at the moment it looks like nobody wants that smoke. This is a guy who has been calling out everybody and nobody wants to get into the ring with him. It's like these guys are allergic to unification fights. I mean, they've been very vocal about trying to get the likes of Munguia in the ring. He didn't want any part of it. They've been very vocal in trying to get CHARLO in the ring. Now listen, I understand that CHARLO has some personal issues from what I've read online, and listen, these are just rumors online on Twitter, so I'm not going to pretend that I know all of the business of Jermall CHARLO, but it seems to be that he has had some issues with depression, he's overweight, and he's also, from what I've read, just won custody of his 5 children. Clearly, he's in a highly stressful situation. I understand that, but You cannot just hold on to a title and not fight. This is the problem. If you want the division to continue to move along, make him a champion in recess. Take the belt away and ensure that when he comes back, if and when he's ready, he's in a position where if he chooses, he becomes the mandatory immediately. That way, he's in a position whereby he doesn't really lose out on anything. It would stop him from being able to hold up the division, essentially. If he was to come back tomorrow, he perhaps would also have the luxury of avoiding other champions like JANIBEK. We don't want to see that as fight fans, right? So if you put him in that position, what you say is take all the time in the world you need to recover. When you come back, you can either then have a tune-up or two and then call your mandatory shot, and let's see you in the ring against whoever it is that picks up that loose belt, whether it's JANIBEK or whoever else. And that way you get the division moving. But we need to see Charlo make some sort of a move. There was talk of Liam Smith fighting JANIBEK, but obviously he's gone down the route of fighting Chris Eubanks Senior, Jr. in a rematch, and I can't hold that against Liam because it's a big money fight. And if he's confident he'll win that fight, he'll still put himself in a position whereby he can potentially face JANIBEK, particularly because it's clear that he can't find opponents. So Liam Smith might be thinking, let me take another big cash opportunity here. I'm confident I'll beat the guy that I stopped in the last fight, and then I can still get my shot against ALIMKHANULY. Whereas if I go and lose to him, perhaps there's other routes for Eubank to go down. He might fight Conor Benn. If he fights Conor Benn, he might lose for argument's sake, or whoever else he might lose to, and then there's no longer the hunger for this rematch. So let me strike while the iron's hot. I don't hold that against Liam Smith. And it's Carlos Adames that is the #1 contender. He's the interim champion. So maybe you have JANIBEK versus Adames, and then if Charlo decides to come back at whatever stage, he gets to fight the winner, for argument's sake. Lara, the WBA champion, I don't know what's going on with him. I also don't know what's going on with the vacant IBF title. I know that Falcao is the #1 contender. Get Falcao fighting JANIBEK for a vacant title then. The guy's begging for fights. He wants that smoke. He wants to unify. Why do we want to force guys that actually want to fight to have to step up and fight at super middleweight? I know he was calling out Canelo last night. That's the cash cow fight. You can't blame him for that. But don't we want to see a traditional division like the middleweight division getting moving again? So fans of these fighters, even if you love Charlo, like we said, you're a PBC guy, you're a Charlo guy, he's your guy, right? Nobody's telling you to betray him and demand that he's stripped and thrown onto the scrap heap of history. But don't you think you should add your voices to the fact that let's make him champion in recess? That way, when he comes back, he'll still be able to say, I'm the real man, give me my shot. And it creates a whole bunch of new interest with the guy that currently has the belt and the guy that used to have the belt but had to step away for personal reasons. Then he's back and all of a sudden you've got a monster fight in the middleweight division again. What is the benefit of keeping Jermall Charlo in the position that he's in? What is the benefit of Erislandy Lara not being active at all, and he's quite old as well? That's my take on all these things. I told you I'd be ranting. I'll be back to my happy self in a couple of days when we'll talk about some of the other fights that took place over the space of the weekend, and also talk about some other updates that I want to discuss regarding boxing in general. Thanks for watching, ladies and gents. Please don't forget to hit a stiff jab on the like button, a right cross on the subscribe button, and an uppercut on the notifications button. Thanks for watching. Chat to you soon. Take care. God bless.